In terms of other fascinating cases, I must say I found the passive smoking case interesting. It was just so, the evidence was, I thought, so overwhelming that passive smoking caused not only lung cancer but other cancers, particularly in children, that I felt I was doing something worthwhile for humanity. And I suppose the Chamberlain case I found also quite fascinating.
I do want to talk about those in a bit more detail, but just finally, just with regard to the Papua New Guinea case that you were talking about, I get the feeling from you that despite the way it went, ultimately, you get a sense of satisfaction at what ultimately the decision and what it then, as you say, it led to possibly what we later saw with Mabo. You get a satisfaction from the way public policy ultimately worked out.
Oh, yes, I think so. Not often. I mean, let's face it, and more so even now than in those days, I mean, a huge amount of litigation is just about money. And when you say about money, you for the most part mean how much an insurance company is going to have to pay. And that's a fact of life. There are not many cases, I think, where some social issue is involved. I had another case. When I was at the bar, I thought they were being unfairly treated, if you like, socially. I mean, they are. You may be a member of the exclusive realm.
No, I'm not.
I hope I'm not offending you when I say they have got some and had some very unusual religious beliefs about being exclusive, which is why they've got that name. But they had they suffered defeat in a series of cases, legal cases, the biggest of which involved a very large meeting hall out at Ashfield, where it was a very large hall that seated 500 people, where they held their meetings. And they sought and were refused a rating exemption, really on the basis that they were a church. And they got knocked back. And I came in to appear for them. I must say, all my experience with them was very satisfactory. They were nice people to deal with, and they were very, very extraordinary. I felt very extraordinary religious views, but they were nice people to deal with, and I felt, I went to the Privy Council twice for them, succeeding in getting raking and land tax exemptions, which gave them no more or less rights than every other religious group, whether they were Anglicans or Jews or Catholics or whatever. So that gave me considerable satisfaction, feeling that I'd put them on an even keel with the other religious groups. Yeah. One thing I'd like to say is this. Of all the very modest accomplishments that I ever made in life, and honours, if you like to call them, I don't have any honours, but I've always regarded my election as President of the Bar Association as the greatest compliment that I've ever received, much more than, say, being appointed to the bench. I mean, people get appointed to the bench for all sorts of reasons, some good, some not so good. But I'm vain enough to think that you only get to be President of the Bar Association if you have the confidence and respect of your peers. No politician can appoint you President of the Bar Association. You can't get it by being smart or clever or having a lot of money, whatever, but only because you're by and large not university, you're not a university regarded well, but great majority of your colleagues think well of you, and I have always regarded that as the greatest compliment I've ever received in life.
But you're right in a way, because political appointments are usually made with other ends in mind, and as you say, the judgment of your peers, and particularly in a very competitive profession like the bar, that is obviously really worth something.
Yeah, not only that, but when you can be very smart, you can be a very good barrister, but an absolute bastard, you know. I mean,
is it possible to be a great barrister and not a bastard?
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't think for many barristers are bastards. What I'm really saying, you can be an unattractive personality, but be a very successful barrister. In fact, I've got to confess that I think the bar, this is an unpopular view, I'm sure, but I think the bar tends to attract some people who don't have particularly attractive personalities. Some people have a belligerent sort of side to their character. I think sometimes that's part of their attraction to the bar. They can, get into court and throw their weight around and so on. I think that whereas I think the bar would probably tend to attract that more than that, say, than dentistry or medicine would, or art, However, that's by the way.